Come, the greatest mistake many people make about prayer is assuming that prayer is only effective when circumstances change immediately. Come, but in truth, prayer is first effective when the believer changes. Prayer is not a religious routine. Prayer is a spiritual engagement that aligns a man with divine intention. When alignment happens, change becomes inevitable. There are moments in life when God does not need to alter your environment, that He needs to adjust your position within that environment. This is why a focused season of prayer can redefine the direction of a life within days. 7 days is not just a measure of time, it is a spiritual pattern that represents completion, order, and transition. When a person commits to a focused prayer for 7 days with understanding and faith, something begins to shift in the realm of the spirit. Long before people see visible changes, decisions are being corrected, burdens are being lifted, and spiritual resistance is being broken. Many miracles fail to manifest, not because God is absent, but because men disengage too early. Consistency in prayer creates momentum in the spirit. This prayer is not about forcing God to act. It is about positioning yourself to receive. Prayer works by activating divine principles. When a principle is activated, it produces results irrespective of feelings. There are times when prayer feels dry, silent, or uneventful. Yet those moments are often the most productive spiritually. Faith is not proven by excitement, but by persistence. If you continue to pray even when emotions are quiet, you are declaring trust in divine order rather than human sensation. During these 7 days, faith must be intentional. Expectation is not passive hope, it is spiritual readiness. Expectation prepares the heart to recognize divine instruction. Many answers to prayer come as guidance rather than instant miracles. A word, an instruction, a correction, or an inner conviction can save years of struggle. Prayer sharpens spiritual perception, allowing you to discern what to accept, what to reject, and what to walk away from. As you engage in this prayer, understand that transformation often begins invisibly. Peace may replace anxiety, clarity may replace confusion, and strength may rise where weakness once dominated. These inner changes are proof that spiritual activity is taking place. Over time, these inward shifts influence outward realities. Decisions improve, relationships align, opportunities become clearer, and favor finds expression. The purpose of this prayer is not just to change situations, but to build a prayerful life. When prayer becomes a lifestyle, progress becomes sustained. A man who knows how to pray will never be stranded because prayer keeps him connected to divine direction. After these 7 days, you may not recognize everything immediately, but you will notice that you are no longer the same. Your thinking will be sharper, your confidence stronger, and your spiritual sensitivity deeper. This is the true evidence that life has begun to change. Many people approach prayer as a tool for asking God to change situations, fix problems, or remove pressure. But the deeper purpose of prayer is alignment. Prayer is not first about getting answers. It is about becoming positioned correctly in the spirit so that life begins to flow according to divine order. When alignment is missing, even good prayers can feel ineffective because the issue is not the absence of power, but the absence of positioning. A misaligned life will struggle even when help is available, but an aligned life will attract help naturally. Spiritual alignment means that a person's thoughts, desires, priorities, and actions begin to agree with divine intention. Prayer becomes the process through which this agreement is established. When a person prays with understanding, the heart slowly shifts from personal will to higher purpose. This does not happen instantly. It happens as the presence of God exposes distractions, wrong motives, and misplaced focus. Through prayer, clarity replaces confusion and direction replaces restlessness. Many people assume they need new opportunities come, but what they truly need is clarity to recognize the opportunities already around them. Life often becomes difficult not because destiny is blocked, but because alignment is lost. When values are compromised, decisions become inconsistent, and spiritual sensitivity is weakened. Prayer restores sensitivity. It tunes the inner man to recognize what aligns with purpose and what does not. This is why some doors close after sincere prayer. Those closures are not punishments, they are corrections. Alignment sometimes requires separation from certain habits, environments, or relationships that silently drain strength and delay progress. Prayer also aligns a person emotionally. Unchecked emotions can sabotage divine instruction. Fear can cause delay, pride can cause resistance, and impatience can cause premature decisions. In prayer, emotions are submitted, not suppressed. Peace begins to regulate reactions, and patience replaces anxiety. When emotions are aligned, obedience becomes easier because decisions are no longer driven by pressure but by conviction. This emotional stability is one of the most overlooked results of prayer, yet it is foundational for lasting transformation. Another dimension of alignment through prayer is perspective. Many people view life only through immediate circumstances, but prayer lifts vision beyond the present moment. It allows a person to see situations as part of a larger process rather than isolated problems. What once felt like delay may be revealed as preparation. What once felt like loss may be understood as protection. Prayer does not always remove challenges, it reframes them. When perspective changes, endurance increases, and discouragement loses its power. Alignment through prayer also affects choices. A praying person begins to make fewer impulsive decisions. The ability to wait increases, and discernment sharpens. Small decisions carry great weight, and prayer ensures those decisions are guided rather than rushed. Many destinies are damaged not by major sins, but by small unwise choices made without spiritual consultation. Prayer creates an internal pause that allows wisdom to speak before action is taken. Relationships are also influenced by alignment. Prayer refines how a person connects with others. It exposes unhealthy dependencies and restores healthy boundaries. Instead of seeking validation from people, a praying person gains confidence rooted in spiritual identity. This shift reduces conflict, jealousy, and comparison. Relationships begin to serve purpose rather than ego. When alignment is restored, their connections become supportive rather than draining. The most powerful evidence that prayer is working is not always an immediate external breakthrough, but an internal repositioning. When the heart is aligned, favor finds expression naturally. Opportunities recognize readiness. Strength increases without external motivation. This is why prayer should never be measured only by visible results. Prayer works first on the person, and when the person changes, life responds accordingly. Consistency in prayer is one of the most misunderstood principles of spiritual growth. Many people believe that the power of prayer is measured by how intense a single moment feels. But spiritual results are rarely produced by isolated experiences. They are produced by sustained engagement. When a person prays consistently, something deeper than emotion is being built. Spiritual capacity is being strengthened. Sensitivity is being sharpened, and endurance is being developed. Consistency trains the inner man to remain focused, even when there is no immediate reward. The idea of 7 days is not rooted in superstition or ritual. It reflects a spiritual pattern of completion and transition throughout life. Meaningful change often requires a defined season of focus. 7 days creates a spiritual boundary. Come, a deliberate withdrawal from distraction into intentional pursuit. When a person commits to praying over a specific period, the mind begins to adjust. Discipline replaces impulse, and structure replaces randomness. This structured approach allows prayer to move from being a reaction to being a practice. In the early days of consistent prayer, resistance often increases. Distractions feel louder, fatigue seems stronger, and doubts become more vocal. This does not mean prayer is failing. It means alignment is beginning. Anything that challenges disorder will be resisted by it. Consistency pushes past this resistance and establishes authority in the spirit. When a person continues praying despite discomfort, they will become stronger than circumstances. This is where spiritual momentum is formed. 7 days of focused prayer also retrains expectation. Many people approach prayer with the mindset of instant results, and when nothing changes immediately, their discouragement sets in. Consistency corrects this mindset. It teaches patience and trust in process. Some changes are too deep to manifest instantly. They require time to take root. Just as seeds grow unseen before they break the surface, prayer produces invisible shifts before visible outcomes. Those who understand this are not easily discouraged. Another effect of consistent prayer is internal order. Life becomes chaotic when priorities are unclear. Through repeated engagement with prayer, priorities begin to realign naturally. Certain desires lose their intensity, while others gain clarity. What once felt urgent may become unnecessary, and what once felt insignificant may become essential. This internal reordering is a sign that transition is taking place. Change begins not with action, but with redefinition. The number 7 also represents a spiritual reset. It marks the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. A 7-day prayer focus creates space for reflection and correction. Patterns that were once repeated unconsciously begin to surface. Weaknesses are exposed not to shame, but to heal. Prayer brings awareness, and awareness creates the opportunity for transformation. Without awareness, change is accidental at best. Consistency in prayer also deepens spiritual sensitivity. The more a person prays, the easier it becomes to recognize spiritual impressions. Guidance becomes clearer, conviction becomes sharper, and direction becomes more specific. This sensitivity does not develop overnight. It develops through repetition. Just as muscles strengthen through repeated use, spiritual perception strengthens through continual engagement. 7 days may seem short, but when approached with sincerity, it can open a new level of awareness. By the end of a consistent prayer season, something subtle yet powerful has occurred. The person who began the journey is not the same as the one who finishes it. Confidence is no longer based on emotion, but on discipline. Faith is no longer dependent on visible proof, but on inner assurance. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity may inspire, but consistency transforms. When prayer becomes sustained, transition becomes inevitable. Many people approach prayer emotionally, believing that the effectiveness of prayer depends on how strongly they feel in the moment. But prayer operates by principles, not emotions. A principle is a law that produces results whenever it is correctly engaged, regardless of feelings. This is why prayer remains powerful even when the heart feels tired, dry, or distracted. Emotions fluctuate, but principles remain constant. When prayer is rooted in divine principles, it continues to work even when emotional excitement fades. One of the strongest principles activated through prayer is spiritual authority. Prayer is not begging. It is engaging spiritual laws that govern outcomes. When a person prays with understanding, they are aligning themselves with authority rather than desperation. Many prayers fail not because God is unwilling, but because the prayer was offered without understanding of how spiritual laws function. Just as physical laws respond to correct application, spiritual principles respond to correct engagement. Another principle activated in prayer is obedience. Prayer is not only speaking, it is also listening and responding. When prayer produces instruction, obedience becomes the channel through which results manifest. Ignoring instruction while continuing to pray creates spiritual contradiction. Principles require cooperation. Prayer may reveal an adjustment in behavior, mindset, or association, and when that adjustment is made, results follow naturally. This is why some answers appear delayed. The principle has been activated. But compliance is incomplete. Prayer also activates the principle of spiritual access. Not every level of wisdom or favor is accessed through effort alone. Certain doors open only through spiritual alignment. Prayer grants access to insight that logic alone cannot provide. This access does not always come with dramatic experiences. Often it comes as clarity, restraint, or redirection. These subtle shifts are evidence that a principle is at work beneath the surface. Another vital principle activated in prayer is persistence. Spiritual resistance does not disappear simply because a request has been made once. Persistence establishes seriousness and authority in the spirit. This is not about convincing God, but about maintaining spiritual posture. When prayer is repeated with faith, it reinforces alignment and weakens opposition. Persistence ensures that spiritual engagement is not casual, but deliberate. Prayer also engages the principle of transformation. Change in life rarely begins with circumstances. It begins with the individual. Prayer works on the inner structure of a person, reshaping thoughts, desires, and reactions. When inner transformation occurs, external results follow naturally. A transformed mindset produces better decisions. Better decisions produce better outcomes. This process does not depend on emotional excitement, but on consistent engagement with truth. Another principle activated is spiritual awareness. Prayer sharpens discernment. It trains the inner man to recognize subtle warnings and confirmations. Many people suffer avoidable losses not because they lacked opportunity, but because they lacked awareness. Prayer heightens sensitivity, making it easier to detect misalignment before damage occurs. This awareness becomes a form of protection. Prayer also activates the principle of timing. Some blessings are not withheld, they are scheduled. Prayer aligns a person with divine timing, preventing premature actions that could destroy long-term results. Emotional prayer often demands immediate answers, but principled prayer trusts timing. This trust produces patience, and patience preserves destiny. When prayer is understood as the activation of principles, discouragement loses its power. The person praying is no longer dependent on mood or atmosphere. Faith becomes steady, not reactive. Even when nothing seems to change outwardly, confidence remains because principles are at work invisibly. This understanding removes frustration and replaces it with assurance. Come. Prayer becomes less about how it feels and more about what it produces through alignment, obedience, persistence, and awareness. Faith, expectation, and obedience are inseparable during a focused season of prayer. Faith is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual confidence rooted in trust. It is the assurance that something is taking place even when there is no visible evidence. During a prayer season, their faith is what keeps a person consistent when results are delayed. Without faith, prayer becomes mechanical, and mechanical prayer quickly turns into frustration. Faith allows a person to pray with conviction rather than desperation, knowing that divine processes are already in motion. Expectation gives direction to faith. Faith believes that God can act, but expectation believes that God will act. Many people pray with faith but without expectation, and this creates spiritual dullness. Expectation sharpens spiritual awareness. When a person expects an outcome, they become attentive to instruction, correction, and opportunity. Expectation trains the heart to recognize answers, even when they do not come in the form originally imagined. Some answers arrive as insights, some as restraint, and some as redirection. Without expectation, these answers are easily overlooked. Expectation also guards against passivity. A person who truly expects change does not live carelessly during a prayer season. Their choices become intentional. Their conversations become guarded. Their focus becomes sharper. Expectation produces spiritual readiness. It is the posture of someone who knows that alignment brings responsibility. When expectation is present, prayer stops being a routine and becomes an engagement. The heart remains open, alert, and responsive. Obedience is the proof that faith and expectation are genuine. Prayer often produces instruction before it produces results. This instruction may challenge comfort habits or relationships. Obedience is the willingness to act on what prayer reveals. Without obedience, faith remains theoretical and expectation becomes empty. Obedience is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is as simple as letting go of a harmful pattern, adjusting a daily routine, or making a difficult but necessary decision. These small acts of obedience carry great spiritual weight. Many delays in answered prayer are not denials but invitations to obedience. When prayer reveals an action and that action is ignored, progress slows. Spiritual principles require cooperation. Obedience aligns human action with divine intention, creating a pathway for results to manifest. This is why prayer without obedience often feels repetitive. The prayer is heard, but the required alignment has not been completed. During a focused prayer season, obedience must be prompt. Delayed obedience weakens spiritual momentum. The longer instruction is postponed, the easier it becomes to rationalize disobedience. Prompt obedience keeps the heart sensitive and the spirit responsive. It also builds confidence. Each act of obedience strengthens trust, making the next instruction easier to follow. Faith, expectation, and obedience also work together to protect a person from discouragement. When faith is present, disappointment that does not destroy commitment. When expectation is present, silence does not produce doubt. When obedience is present, progress continues even when feelings fluctuate. These three elements stabilize the prayer journey, preventing emotional extremes that often lead people to abandon consistency. Come. Another important dimension is that obedience often precedes understanding. Many people want full clarity before acting, but prayer does not always provide explanations. It provides direction. Obedience without full understanding is an act of trust. It acknowledges that divine wisdom exceeds human logic. This kind of obedience accelerates spiritual growth because it trains the heart to rely on guidance rather than analysis. Their expectation must also be managed correctly. Expectation is not demanding outcomes on a personal timeline. It is remaining confident while submitting to divine timing. When expectation becomes impatient, it turns into pressure. True expectation remains hopeful without becoming anxious. It allows space for process while maintaining confidence in purpose. Faith matures when it is tested. A focused prayer season often exposes impatience, doubt, and fear. These exposures are not failures. They are opportunities for growth. As faith is exercised, it becomes resilient. It no longer depends on signs or confirmation. It becomes anchored in trust. This depth of faith produces stability long after the prayer season ends. When faith fuels prayer, their expectation sharpens awareness and obedience completes alignment. Prayer becomes transformative rather than repetitive. Come, life begins to shift not because circumstances are forced to change. Come, but because the individual has become positioned correctly to walk into what has already been prepared. Spiritual sensitivity is the ability to perceive what is happening beyond the surface of visible events. It is not mysticism or imagination. It is awareness developed through alignment, prayer, and attentiveness. Many people desire visible breakthroughs without developing the sensitivity required to recognize spiritual movement. During a season of focused prayer, spiritual sensitivity becomes sharpened. Come, allowing a person to detect change long before it manifests outwardly. Change often begins subtly. Before circumstances shift, inner awareness shifts. A person may notice a quiet assurance replacing anxiety, or clarity replacing confusion. These changes are easily dismissed if one is only looking for dramatic signs. Spiritual sensitivity allows a person to value these internal shifts as evidence that prayer is working. When sensitivity is absent, people conclude nothing is happening and abandon the process prematurely. One of the main functions of spiritual sensitivity is discernment. Discernment helps a person distinguish between opportunities that align with purpose and those that appear attractive but lead to delay. During prayer, sensitivity increases to subtle warnings and confirmations. A lack of peace, a recurring hesitation, or a quiet conviction can be as significant as a visible sign. Sensitivity teaches their heart to respect these signals rather than override them with logic or desire. Spiritual sensitivity also helps a person recognize spiritual resistance. Not every challenge is a setback. Sometimes resistance is an indication that progress is taking place. When prayer begins to disturb old patterns, discomfort may arise. Fatigue, distraction, or emotional agitation can increase. Sensitivity allows a person to interpret these experiences correctly rather than assuming failure. Understanding resistance prevents discouragement and strengthens persistence. Another important aspect of spiritual sensitivity is timing. Not all doors should be forced open. Sensitivity helps a person know when to act and when to wait. Many mistakes occur when action is taken without discernment. Prayer heightens awareness of divine timing, preventing premature decisions that can damage long-term outcomes. Waiting, when guided by sensitivity, is not inactivity but strategic restraint. Spiritual sensitivity also refines reactions. Instead of responding impulsively to situations, a sensitive person responds thoughtfully. Prayer slows the internal response system. This pause creates space for wisdom. Emotional reactions often lead to regret, but sensitivity produces measured responses that preserve peace and clarity. Over time, this ability to respond rather than react becomes a defining strength. During a focused prayer season, sensitivity often exposes misalignment. Certain habits, conversations, or environments may suddenly feel uncomfortable. This discomfort is not condemnation, it is awareness. Sensitivity reveals what drains spiritual energy and what strengthens it. When these revelations are honored, alignment deepens. When they are ignored, spiritual dullness returns. Growth requires responsiveness to what sensitivity reveals. Another dimension of sensitivity is perception of instruction. Answers to prayer frequently come as inner guidance rather than external miracles. A thought that persists, a conviction that remains, or a repeated inner prompting can be an answer in itself. Sensitivity allows a person to recognize these promptings as guidance rather than coincidence. Without sensitivity, instruction is easily overlooked or dismissed. Spiritual sensitivity also builds confidence. When a person learns to recognize subtle confirmations, fear of missing direction decreases, trust grows. Decision making becomes less stressful because it is guided by awareness rather than pressure. This confidence is quiet but strong. It does not need constant reassurance because it is rooted in perception. Another effect of sensitivity is protection. Many dangers are avoided not through strength but through awareness. Sensitivity alerts a person before damage occurs. A wrong association, a risky decision, or an unnecessary confrontation can be avoided simply by listening to inner restraint. Prayer sharpens this protective awareness, making life safer and more ordered. As sensitivity develops, dependence on external validation decreases. A person no longer needs dramatic signs to feel secure. They learn to value peace, clarity, and conviction as evidence of alignment. This maturity prevents emotional instability and spiritual burnout. Prayer becomes a place of refinement rather than performance. When spiritual sensitivity is developed, a person learns to recognize that the absence of visible change does not mean the absence of progress. Invisible shifts are often the foundation of visible breakthroughs. Those who learn to discern these shifts walk with patience and confidence, knowing that what is forming within will eventually express itself outwardly. Transformation that lasts does not begin with visible changes in circumstances. It begins within the individual. Prayer works first on the inner structure of a person before it reshapes the outer environment. Many people desire immediate external results, but without inward change, external breakthroughs often become temporary or even destructive. Prayer addresses the root before it touches the fruit. When the inner man is corrected, strengthened, and aligned, life begins to respond naturally. One of the first inward changes prayer produces is in thinking. Patterns of fear, limitation, and self-doubt begin to lose their authority. Prayer exposes inaccurate beliefs that silently govern behavior. When a person consistently prays, their mind becomes renewed and their interpretation of life changes. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable, not because circumstances have changed, but because perception has shifted. A renewed mind produces wiser responses, and wise responses alter outcomes. Prayer also transforms desires. Not every desire leads to fulfillment. Some desires are reactions to pressure, comparison, or insecurity. During prayer, certain desires weaken while others gain clarity. What once seemed urgent may no longer feel necessary. This is not loss, it is refinement. When desires are purified, energy is no longer wasted pursuing distractions. Focus increases and progress accelerates. A person who knows what they truly want is harder to derail. Another inward transformation occurs in emotional regulation. Prayer stabilizes the emotional life instead of being controlled by anger, anxiety, or impatience. A person begins to operate from peace. This does not mean emotions disappear. It means they no longer dominate decision making. Emotional maturity is one of the clearest signs of spiritual growth. When emotions are aligned, reactions become measured, conversations become healthier, and conflict reduces. This inner calm often produces outward favor because people respond positively to stability. Prayer also strengthens inner discipline. Consistent prayer builds self-control. It trains the will to submit to purpose rather than impulse. This discipline affects daily habits, time management, and priorities. Small changes in routine can produce major long-term results. Discipline is rarely dramatic, but it is powerful. When a discipline is developed inwardly, consistency follows outwardly, and consistency produces excellence. As inward transformation continues, decision-making improves. Prayer sharpens discernment, making it easier to identify what aligns with purpose. Their choices become intentional rather than reactive. This shift alone can change the trajectory of a life. Many setbacks are the result of poor decisions made and under pressure. Prayer creates internal space for wisdom to operate. When wisdom leads decisions, regret decreases and confidence increases. Relationships are also transformed as the inner life is refined. Prayer heals insecurity, which often causes unhealthy attachment or unnecessary conflict. When identity is rooted internally, relationships are no longer used for validation. This produces healthier connections. Boundaries become clearer, communication improves, and mutual respect increases. As inner confidence grows, outward interactions become more balanced and purposeful. Inner transformation also produces courage. Fear often prevents people from taking necessary steps. Prayer replaces fear with assurance. This courage is not reckless. It is steady. It allows a person to confront challenges, make difficult decisions, and step into responsibility without being paralyzed by uncertainty. Courage opens doors that talent alone cannot access. As these inner changes accumulate, outward results begin to manifest. Opportunities appear because readiness has been established. Favor flows because character can sustain it. Growth becomes visible in career, ministry, relationships, and personal fulfillment. These results are not forced. They are attracted. Life responds to alignment. When the internal structure is strong, external expansion becomes safe. Another important outward manifestation is consistency in progress. Inward transformation creates sustainability. Instead of cycles of excitement and burnout, growth becomes steady. This stability allows long-term impact. People who change inwardly do not need constant motivation because their drive is rooted in conviction. Conviction outlasts emotion. Prayer also produces resilience. When challenges arise, inwardly transformed individuals recover faster. They are not easily broken by setbacks because their foundation is internal. Resilience protects progress. It ensures that temporary difficulties do not reverse long-term growth. This strength is often invisible but deeply influential. Transformation that begins inwardly eventually reshapes reputation. People notice wisdom, peace, and consistency. Trust increases. Influence grows quietly. Doors open not because of self-promotion, but because character speaks. This is the power of prayer working from the inside outward, reshaping thoughts, desires, emotions, discipline, and decisions until life itself begins to reflect the change that has already taken place within. Prayer is not a moment of religious expression, but a process of transformation that repositions a life. When prayer is approached with understanding, consistency, faith, expectation, obedience, and spiritual sensitivity, it produces change that begins within and gradually manifests outwardly. This 7-day focus is not about time alone. It is about alignment, discipline, and sustained engagement with divine principles. As the inner man is refined, thinking is renewed, emotions are stabilized, decisions are sharpened, and direction becomes clear. Come, visible results may not appear immediately, but invisible shifts are already shaping the outcome. When a person is changed through prayer, circumstances eventually respond, opportunities align, and progress becomes sustainable. This is the true power of prayer, not forcing results, but becoming positioned to walk into a life that has already been prepared.